Hey everyone, welcome back. Hope you're all doing great. Before we dive in, drop a comment and let us know where you're watching from. We love seeing folks from all over the place tuning in. The torrential rain slammed against the towering skyscrapers of Bridgeport, as if trying to wash away the entire bustling city. Inside a gleaming black Bentley, Gavin Carter sat silently in the back seat, his cold eyes flickering over the glowing tablet screen filled with flashing financial charts. Suddenly, the luxury car jerked to a halt, its engine sputtering with unsettling noises. Gavin frowned. His personal driver, Thomas, immediately turned around, his voice laced with apology. "Mr. Carter, it seems the engine is having issues. We're near downtown Bridgeport. I'll call for assistance right away." Gavin snapped the tablet closed and glanced at his Patek Philippe watch. 1 hour left until his meeting with the Global Investment Council. Time was money, and he despised delays. "Do it," Gavin ordered curtly, pushing open the car door and stepping out into the storm, his sleek black umbrella barely shielding him from the biting rain. Just a few steps away, an old red brick building appeared through the downpour. A rusted sign swung above the entrance. Bridgeport Community Center for Little Souls in Need. Gavin smirked, planning to step inside for shelter, but the scene that unfolded before him made him freeze in his tracks. The door to the center burst open. A middle-aged man stormed out, roughly dragging two small boys behind him. The two boys looked like carbon copies of each other, tousled brown hair, wide frightened eyes glistening with rain and tears. "Enough," the man barked, nearly tossing them down the steps. "I ain't your father. I don't know you nothing." One of the boys clung to his pant leg, sobbing hoarsely. "Please, don't leave us." The man's boot kicked the tiny hand away. Without a backward glance, he turned and stalked into the swirling mist of rain. Gavin stood motionless. Something deep within his chest, something long frozen, cracked open. Memories he thought buried came rushing back. Lonely windows, unanswered promises, the hollow ache of abandonment. He strode forward, shielding the boys with his umbrella. "You there!" Gavin barked. The man paused, glancing back, his face instantly recognizing Gavin Carter, the mogul whose visage graced financial magazines and TV screens. The man's arrogance faltered, replaced by a sheepish grimace. "Mr. Carter, they ain't mine. Their mom's dead. I was just dropping them off at the center." Gavin's voice sliced through the rain, cold and precise. "In the middle of a storm? Shoving them out like trash." The man ducked his head and bolted, vanishing into the gray haze, leaving behind two shivering souls, soaking wet, clinging to each other at Gavin's feet. A community center worker rushed out, frantic, trying to gather the boys. "He left them this morning," she gasped. "We didn't even have time to complete the paperwork before he disappeared." Gavin knelt down, his commanding hands suddenly awkward as they rested on the small, trembling shoulders. "What's your name?" he asked softly. "Liam," one boy whispered through chattering teeth. "And you?" Gavin turned to the other. "No." The smaller boy barely breathed. The names echoed in Gavin's mind like invisible threads binding his heart. Without thinking, Gavin shrugged off his coat, wrapping it around the boys and pulling them close. "We'll find them a place," the center worker said hesitantly. Gavin straightened, his eyes now burning with a quiet, immovable fire. "No need," he said firmly. "They're coming with me." An hour later, inside a cramped, cluttered office of the community center, Gavin signed temporary guardianship papers with the speed of a billion-dollar deal. "I will be responsible," he stated, his tone brooking no argument. "For now, until a permanent solution is found." Liam and Noah sat huddled on a cracked leather chair, their small faces etched with exhaustion and wary hope, the kind of fragile hope abandoned children rarely dared to entertain. When the paperwork was done, Gavin returned to them, kneeling so they were eye to eye. "We're going home," he said, his voice warm and sure. "Home," Noah whispered, uncertain. "Home," Gavin repeated, reaching out his hand. For a moment, they hesitated. Then Liam, the elder by mere minutes, grasped his hand. Noah clutched onto him immediately after. Gavin squeezed their tiny hands. The grip was real, grounding, more powerful than any deal he had ever closed. The black Bentley pulled away from Bridgeport under the relentless rain, carrying 3 solitary souls, and the beginning of a new journey. Gavin sat in silence between Liam and Noah, their small hands still wrapped tightly around his. And in that moment, Gavin Carter, the man once nicknamed the Cold Machine of Wall Street, understood something he'd never found in boardrooms or bank vaults. Some of the most important deals in life don't come with a contract. They come with an outstretched hand, offered in the middle of a storm, and a silent vow that from today onward, none of them would ever have to face the world alone again. The heavy iron gates of Carter Hall creaked open, revealing the massive granite mansion standing solemn amid the misty rain. Gavin Carter sat in the back seat of the Bentley, his firm hands gently clasping the 2 small, trembling hands of Liam and Noah, feeling their coldness seep into his skin. As the car came to a stop at the grand staircase, Gavin glanced briefly at the boys, wondering for a fleeting moment if he was making an irreversible mistake. But then Noah's wide, trusting eyes silenced every doubt. "We're here," Gavin said softly. The 2 boys looked up at the towering house with its soaring windows and somber black-tiled roof. Carter Hall had once been praised by architecture magazines for its austere beauty and power, but to their young eyes, it was merely a dark, cold castle. Crossing the threshold, Gavin gave each boy a gentle nudge. "Go on. This is your home, if you want it to be." In the vast kitchen lined with marble and stainless steel, Mrs. Hughes, the elderly housekeeper, was hurriedly setting out a simpler dinner than usual at Gavin's urgent request. "Spaghetti and toast?" she whispered skeptically, glancing at Gavin, the man who normally demanded 5-course meals even when dining alone. "They're children," Gavin replied crisply. "Keep it simple." Gavin took a seat at the long table, usually reserved for international guests and high-profile investors. Across from him, Liam and Noah sat small and stiff in chairs far too big for them. Steaming plates were placed before them. The rich aroma of tomato sauce filled the once-cold kitchen. Liam sneaked a glance at Gavin, then cautiously picked up his fork. Noah followed his brother's lead. 1 minute, 2 minutes. An oppressive silence hung in the air, until Gavin reached out, clumsily twirling a knot of spaghetti onto his fork, splattering a little sauce onto his crisp white shirt. The boy's eyes widened, then a fit of giggles burst forth. Gavin glanced at the stain on his sleeve, raised an eyebrow, and smiled, an awkward but genuine smile. The invisible wall around the table crumbled instantly. Liam and Noah laughed louder, pure and infectious. "If it gets dirty, you wash it," Gavin shrugged. "It's no reason to starve." That night, Gavin sat in the grand library, his inbox overflowing with emails from the firm. But his mind wandered upstairs to the 2 little souls trying and failing to fall asleep. A small, broken sob echoed through the house's old intercom system. Gavin shot up, striding up the staircase 2 steps at a time. He nudged open the boy's door and found Liam sitting curled up on the bed, Noah clutching the blanket tightly. Gavin sat down on the edge of the bed. "Nightmare?" he asked quietly. Noah nodded, tears streaming down his cheeks. "He'll come back for us," Liam whispered, fear etched into every word. Gavin clenched his fists. "No one has the right to abandon you again," he said, voice steady. "And I'm here." Silence. Then Liam reached out, grabbing a handful of Gavin's shirt. "Will you stay until we fall asleep?" A simple request, but for Gavin, a man who had spent his life giving orders and signing contracts, it carried unimaginable weight. He nodded. That night, under the soft glow of the nightlight, Gavin Carter, the iron-willed CEO, leaned back against the headboard, listening to the steady breathing of the 2 boys, feeling, for the first time in years, truly at peace. The next morning, sunlight streamed through the soaring windows, bathing the polished wood floors in gold. In the kitchen, Gavin fumbled awkwardly with a box of cereal as Mrs. Hughes entered, apron in hand. "Sir, are you quite sure you want to prepare breakfast yourself? Can we skip the royal banquet routine for once?" Gavin muttered, spilling cereal across the counter. At the breakfast table, Liam and Noah burst into laughter. Uncle Gavin dropped it all. Noah shouted gleefully. Gavin surrendered, raising his hands. "All right, who wants to serve themselves today?" The boys eagerly rushed over to help, mixing cereal, milk, and, somehow, marshmallows scavenged from the candy drawer. It was a messy, noisy, joyful breakfast, and for the first time in Carter Hall, the laughter of children echoed through the once lonely halls. Getting the boys ready for school was an ordeal Gavin had never prepared for. At the gates of Westridge Academy, the prestigious private school Gavin had enrolled them in with a single phone call the night before, Liam clung tightly to his hand, eyes wide with anxiety. "You won't leave us here, will you?" Liam whispered. Gavin knelt, placing a steady hand on the boy's shoulder. "No one's leaving you, he promised. I'll be right here to pick you up." As the boys melted into the crowd of students, Gavin stood silently by the gates for a long while, not burdened by obligation, but by a deep, aching fear that old wounds might find their way back to these fragile hearts. That evening, Gavin sat by their bedside, holding a tattered storybook in his hand. Once upon a time, he began awkwardly, there was a little dinosaur. Noah nestled in his side while Liam dozed off, a soft smile on his lips. And the dinosaur got lost in the big forest. Gavin continued, weaving the story with quiet emotion. But then he found a new family where he never had to be afraid again. Liam sighed happily in his sleep, and Noah squeezed Gavin's hand tighter. Closing the book and switching off the lamp, Gavin watched the boys drift into dreams. And in that quiet room, he realized, once he had built empires with coal numbers and steel logic. Now, he was learning to build something else, something infinitely harder and more precious. A family, not with money, not with power, but with clumsy breakfasts, awkward bedtime stories, and silent midnight promises. With love, even if the words had yet to be spoken. The first cracks, and the battle begins. The early autumn sunlight streamed through the soaring windows of Carter Hall, casting warm golden bands across the gleaming hardwood floors. In the kitchen, the sound of spoons clinking against cereal bowls mixed with the giggles of Liam and Noah. Gavin leaned against the counter, a cup of steaming coffee in hand, quietly watching the boys wrestle with breakfast. That scene, clumsy and spontaneous, stirred something soft inside him, something all the power and success in the world had never been able to touch. Suddenly, the doorbell rang, tearing through the peaceful morning. Gavin glanced at the clock. 9 o'clock sharp. Who could it be at this hour? Mrs. Hughes hurried to answer, and then a sharp, familiar voice cut through the air like a razor. "Gavin, we need to talk. Now." Veronica Carter, his sister, CEO of Reed Enterprises, stormed into the house like a hurricane, her tailored designer dress crisp, her high heels striking sharp blows against the floor. Gavin set down his coffee, his expression cooling. "Veronica," he said calmly, "you could have called first." "If I had," she snapped, "you would have found a way to dodge me." Her sharp eyes swept the kitchen, landing on Liam and Noah, now frozen at the table, their spoons suspended midair. Her face hardened instantly. "What is going on here, Gavin?" Gavin crossed his arms, facing the brewing storm without flinching. "These boys," he said slowly, "are living here now." Veronica's eyes widened. "You brought orphans into your house, like you were rescuing stray animals? Do you have any idea what you're risking? Your reputation, your shares, the investors' confidence. They're not assets," Gavin said, voice dropping to a low, steady rumble. "They're human beings, not a business risk." Veronica gave a cold laugh. "You've never done anything without calculating the return. Don't pretend this is some spontaneous act of kindness." Gavin remained silent. In his mind, images flashed, Liam's tilted smile, Noah's soulful eyes, and memories of Nathan. Without another word, Gavin led the boys to the living room where he had laid out crayons, colored pencils, and sketch paper the night before. "Uncle Gavin," Noah asked timidly, kneeling on the thick carpet, Can we really draw on real paper? We won't get in trouble." Gavin froze for a beat, his heart twisting. Such an innocent question, Yet it revealed a whole world the boys had come from, where even small joys were met with fear. "Here," Gavin said, voice tight with emotion, "you can draw as much as you want." And then he dropped down onto the floor, expensive suit and all, picked up a crayon, and started drawing with them, crooked, messy pictures filled with color and laughter. Across the room, Veronica watched, arms crossed, her icy gaze flickering for the briefest moment, and then hardening again. That afternoon, after Liam and Noah fell asleep on the couch, Gavin and Veronica sat in the library. The brandy in their glasses remained untouched. Veronica tightened her grip on the glass, her voice cutting straight to the bone. "What are you looking for in them, Gavin? A second chance? A memory of Nathan?" The name hit the room like a thunderclap, stirring old wounds long buried. Nathan, their late brother, the one with the same twinkle in his eye, the same mischievous grin Liam and Noah wore. "I see something in them," Gavin said at last. "Something reason can't explain." Veronica leaned back, sneering. "You're being sentimental. You're being weak." "Or maybe," Gavin replied, voice steel, "for the first time in my life, I'm choosing what's right instead of what's easy." That night, Gavin once again sat by the boy's bedside. "Noah, Liam," he said, gently, "do you want a bedtime story?" Both nodded eagerly, their eyes shining. Gavin opened an old, worn storybook. This time, a tale about a little fox who got lost but found a new family in the most unexpected place. When he finished, Liam looked up. "Uncle Gavin, can we stay here forever?" Gavin's throat tightened. That vulnerable hope, that fragile trust. He knew he couldn't betray it. He laid a hand over theirs. "As long as you want," he said softly, "I'll be here." The next morning, Gavin was in the kitchen, clumsily attempting to cook burnt eggs and uneven toast when Mrs. Hughes rushed in. "Sir, there's something you need to see." She handed him a thick envelope. "Court documents. Petition for guardianship review. Filed by Veronica Carter." Gavin's jaw clenched, the papers crinkling in his tightening grip. Veronica wasn't just opposing him. She was willing to use the full force of the law to rip Liam and Noah away. And he knew the real battle was only just beginning. The dawn of truth. The soft rays of early autumn sunlight slipped through the white lace curtains of Carter Hall's towering windows, casting gentle golden trails across the gleaming hardwood floors. In the kitchen, the clinking of spoons against cereal bowls mixed with the cheerful chatter of Liam and Noah, arguing over who could decorate their pancakes with chocolate chips better. A peaceful morning, something Gavin was slowly learning to treasure. His phone buzzed quietly in his jacket pocket. Gavin glanced at the screen. A message from Marcus Shaw, his trusted head of security for over a decade. Information found. Meet me in the security office at 10 a.m. Gavin gave a brief nod. Part of him hoped Marcus had found nothing, that Liam and Noah's past was simple and clean. But another part knew, to truly protect them, he needed to know the whole truth, however painful it might be. 2 hours later, Gavin entered the discreet security office hidden behind the library. Marcus stood waiting, tall and grim. On the desk lay a thick stack of files, and a single white envelope, placed separately. "We identified the boy's mother," Marcus began, his voice heavy. "Her name was Elise Turner." Gavin sat down, his heart tightening. Elise, a name unfamiliar, yet now intimately tied to his life. "She worked at the Northwood Conservation Project," Marcus continued, "a nonprofit focused on environmental efforts where Nathan was once a major benefactor." Gavin held his breath. Marcus slid the white envelope toward him. "And this arrived at Carter Hall's front gate this morning." Gavin slowly opened it. Inside was an old, slightly faded photograph. In the picture, Nathan beamed with his signature grin, his arm draped over a young woman, her brown hair tousled, her eyes bright, her smile gentle. On the back of the photo, a single handwritten line. "They have his eyes." Gavin's hand tightened around the photo, his heart pounding. He thought of Liam and Noah's wide, familiar eyes, eyes that mirrored a spirit he thought he'd lost forever. When Gavin returned to the main house, Liam and Noah were packing their school bags, their new uniforms slightly too big for their small frames. "Uncle Gavin, We have a presentation today, Liam announced, bouncing around the breakfast table. Gavin smiled, masking the storm inside him. He knelt down, straightening Noah's tiny tie and smoothing Liam's unruly hair. Well then, Gavin teased warmly, our young gentleman must make Carter Hall proud today. I'm talking about dinosaurs. Noah shouted. And I'm talking about space. Liam added. Gavin chuckled. Questions without answers loomed over him. But this moment, this innocence, was all he wanted to protect. That afternoon, while the boys were still at school, Marcus returned with more files. We found the hospital where Elise gave birth, Marcus reported. No father listed on the birth certificates. But we uncovered internal notes. He hesitated, weighing his words. She listed the father as having died in a mountain climbing accident. Gavin stiffened. Mountain climbing accident. Nathan. Marcus placed a copy of the birth records on the table. The father's name was left blank, but under special notes, one line was scribbled. Donor. N.R. N.I.A. Nathan Reed. Gavin's hands trembled slightly. Deep down, he knew this wasn't coincidence. A part of Nathan, his beloved brother, sat at his breakfast table every morning, calling him uncle. Later that day, Gavin personally drove to pick up Liam and Noah, something he'd never imagined himself doing. The boys burst from the school gates, backpacks bouncing, faces flushed with excitement. Uncle Gavin, I got a star for my presentation. Liam beamed, holding up a little certificate. Gavin bent down, scooping them both into a hug. Well done, my brave boys, he said, and for the first time in years, pride filled his chest, pure and overwhelming. On the way home, they stopped at a little ice cream shop. Liam chose chocolate, Noah chose strawberry, and Gavin, awkwardly, picked vanilla just because it seemed safe. The car ride was filled with laughter, while the late afternoon sun painted the streets gold. That night, after reading stories until the boys drifted to sleep, Gavin sat at the old wooden desk in the library. The photograph of Nathan and Elise lay before him. He thought of Nathan, how he had lived fully, loved fearlessly, trusted the world with an open, unguarded heart. Could it be that Nathan had left behind one final miracle? Gavin picked up his brandy glass and then set it back down untouched. He didn't need anything to clear his mind anymore. He knew exactly what he had to do. Before heading to bed, Gavin peeked once more into Liam and Noah's room. The soft night light cast a warm glow over their peaceful, sleeping faces, tousled hair, steady breathing, pure serenity. He sat on the edge of their bed, whispering, no matter what the truth is, I promise I'll never leave you. No vow Gavin Carter had ever made carried more weight than this one. Outside the window, the autumn stars glimmered like silent witnesses to the promise spoken from the depths of a once-hardened heart. The autumn battle. Morning sunlight filtered softly through the white lace curtains of Carter Hall, casting warm beams across the polished wooden floors. In the kitchen, Gavin busied himself preparing breakfast, cereal, toast, and glasses of cold milk. Across the table, Liam and Noah argued spiritedly over who would get to pick the bedtime story that night. I choose The Adventures of Huck Finn, Liam declared proudly. No, it's my turn tonight, Noah protested, his chin resting stubbornly on the table. Gavin chuckled, feigning a grimace. Looks like we'll need a Supreme Court at Carter Hall to settle this. Noah smiled, but Gavin noticed something off, a slight paleness to his cheeks, a sluggishness in his movements. The way Noah rubbed his temples when he lowered his head toward his cereal bowl didn't escape Gavin's careful gaze. You feeling all right, Noah? He asked gently. Noah nodded quickly, but moments later, he pushed away from the table, clutching the chair for balance, as if the world had tilted beneath him. Hours later, Gavin received an urgent call from the school. When he arrived, he found Noah slumped in the nurse's office, his face flushed with fever, his eyes closed tight. We think he's come down with a severe flu, the nurse said worriedly. He's dizzy, burning up, and complaining of a headache. Gavin knelt down, gathering Noah's small, fevered body into his arms, light and fragile in a way that tore at his heart. Don't worry, Noah, Gavin whispered. I'm taking you home. But instead of heading back to Carter Hall, Gavin ordered Thomas to drive straight to the hospital. A growing dread gnawed at his gut. In the ER waiting area, Liam clung tightly to Gavin's hand as the doctors worked feverishly behind closed doors. "Uncle Gavin," Liam whispered, his voice shaking. "Is Noah going to be okay?" Gavin squeezed the boy's hand firmly, never taking his eyes off the door. "We're going to do everything we can to make him better," he promised, even as uncertainty twisted deep inside him. An hour later, in a small consultation room, Gavin sat across from Dr. Susan Matsui, head of pediatric hematology. She opened a thick folder, her expression somber and compassionate. "Mr. Carter," she began carefully, "Noah's blood work shows something unusual." Gavin's heart stopped. "We've discovered that Noah is suffering from a severe case of bone marrow failure," Dr. Matsui explained, her voice steady but grim. "His bone marrow isn't producing enough blood cells to sustain him." The room seemed to tilt around Gavin. "Is there a treatment?" he croaked out. "We can start with immunosuppressive therapy," Dr. Matsui said, "but at the rate he's deteriorating, Noah will need an urgent bone marrow transplant." It felt like a wrecking ball slamming into the fragile world Gavin had just started to build with these boys. Back in Noah's hospital room, Gavin sat at the bedside, gripping the boy's small, clammy hand. Noah stirred, opening his fever-bright eyes. "I'm sorry I'm causing trouble," he whispered hoarsely. Gavin's throat tightened painfully. "You're not trouble, Noah," he said, voice thick with emotion. "You're the best gift that's ever happened to me." Liam sat nearby, drawing clumsy little dinosaurs on the hospital intake forms to cheer up his brother. Watching them, Gavin felt a fierce, protective fire ignite within him. He wouldn't lose Noah, not without a fight. The next day, Gavin and Liam had their blood drawn to test for marrow compatibility. "Twins often have a higher match probability," Dr. Matsui explained, "but we'll need to verify it." Gavin signed the consent forms without hesitation. If he could save Noah by any means necessary, he would. During the blood draw, Gavin held Liam's small hand, squeezing reassuringly whenever the boy winced. "Uncle Gavin," Liam asked in a trembling voice, "will I be able to save him?" His voice wavered, but his eyes shone with determination. "We're going to try everything we can," Gavin said, pressing a kiss to Liam's soft, messy hair. That evening, Gavin brought a makeshift dinner into Noah's hospital room. Sandwiches, orange juice, and Liam's favorite mashed potatoes. Despite his weakness, Noah managed a few bites, his face lighting up as Gavin told funny stories about the times he and Nathan used to ditch school to go fishing. "Uncle Gavin, were you and our dad twins too?" Liam asked, curiosity bright in his eyes. Gavin nodded, his throat tight. "Yes, just like you two, always side by side." Noah smiled, his fevered eyes sparkling faintly with understanding. 2 days later, the test results came back. Liam, not a match. Gavin, very low compatibility. Dr. Matsui broke the news carefully. "We're initiating a search in the National Donor Registry," she said, "but it could take time that Noah may not have." The air in the hospital room grew heavy and still. Gavin pulled both boys into his arms, holding them as if he could shield them from the cruel world outside. Late that night, when the hospital had fallen silent, Gavin sat beside Noah's bed, his hand gently smoothing the boy's sweat-damp hair. "Listen to me, Noah," Gavin whispered, voice raw but steady. "We're going to fight this. I promise you, we'll find a way." Noah nodded sleepily, lost to fever dreams. And Gavin stayed there, a silent sentinel, refusing to leave, ready to fight for the small, precious family fate had entrusted to him. The winter that changed everything. That morning, Carter Hall was blanketed under the rare, soft light of a winter sun. The snow had finally stopped, leaving behind a smooth, pristine sheet of white across the grounds. In the kitchen, Gavin stood awkwardly by the coffee machine while Liam and Noah gleefully competed to sprinkle chocolate chips onto the steaming pancakes' misses. Bradley, the elderly housekeeper, had just flipped. "Uncle Gavin, are you coming to school with us today?" Noah asked, his eyes wide with hope. Gavin smiled, stirring his coffee. "If your teacher allows it, I'll stop by after my meeting. But remember, We have a checkup at the hospital around noon. Liam scrunched up his face. Again. Hang in there, kiddo, Gavin said, ruffling their hair. We're almost at the finish line. The three of them sat down for breakfast. Outside, the world was a soft, frozen stillness, so quiet that the clink of spoons against plates echoed through the room. It was an ordinary family moment, small, fragile, yet to Gavin, who had lived decades in solitude, it was more precious than any multi-million-dollar deal he had ever signed. After dropping the boys off at school, Gavin made his way to his office. Marcus Shaw was already there, waiting, a thick folder in his hand, his expression grim. I have the proof, Mr. Carter, Marcus began in a heavy voice. Veronica tampered with the DNA results. She bribed a lab technician to forge the reports. Gavin clenched his fists, the betrayal cutting deeper than he had anticipated, a wound delivered by blood. We have enough to expose her to the board, Marcus continued. But I need to ask, how do you want to handle this? Gavin sank into a chair, the weight of the world pressing down on his shoulders. His gaze lifted to the old portrait on the wall, a painting of their parents, the founders of Carter Industries, the ones who had built an empire with their own two hands. They had taught him about loyalty, honor, and the cost of both. Summon Veronica, Gavin said, his voice low but certain. Today, that afternoon, after Noah finished his tests, Gavin kept his promise and took the boys to a bookstore near the town square. The warm scent of fresh paper and hot cocoa filled the air, a cozy haven against the chill outside. Uncle Gavin, I want this one, Liam shouted, holding up a book about dinosaurs. Noah, quieter, picked a comic book about superheroes, glancing shyly at Gavin now, and then as if needing reassurance he was still there, still real. Gavin knelt down, placing a hand gently on each of their small shoulders. You can have as many as you want, he said softly. Today is your day. When they left, each boy clutched a heavy bag of new treasures. Gavin held their hands tightly, a warmth blooming inside him that not even the biting cold could touch. Night fell. In the great library of Carter Hall, the fire crackled against the dark mahogany shelves. Veronica Carter swept into the room, her elegant evening gown painfully out of place amid the somber air. She held her head high, her sharp eyes flashing with disdain. You call me here for what, Gavin? Her voice was cold, razor sharp. Gavin stood firm, steel in his gray eyes. He laid Marcus's folder down on the table. You betrayed this family, he said, voice steady. You betrayed innocent children. Do you have anything to say for yourself? Veronica laughed, a hollow, bitter sound. Family, she sneered. You're destroying our legacy for a pair of orphans who have nothing to do with us. Us? Gavin repeated, his tone grave. No, Veronica. We stopped being us a long time ago. And those children, not this cold empire, reminded me what family truly means. Veronica's fists clenched, her red-painted nails digging into her palms. Expose me and you'll lose everything, she spat. Your power, your name, Carter Industries itself. Gavin stepped forward, his face illuminated by the firelight. If that's the price, he said softly but fiercely, then so be it. I'd rather lose it all than lose the chance to be their father. Late that night, after Liam and Noah had fallen asleep in their new bedroom, walls adorned with their own crayon masterpieces, Gavin slipped quietly into the frozen garden. The snow had melted just enough to reveal the wilted remains of summer's flowers under the moonlight. He tilted his head back, staring up at the sea of winter stars. In the stillness, memories of Nathan flooded him. The laughter, the promises, the dreams they once shared. Gavin closed his eyes and whispered into the night. Brother, if you can hear me, know that I'm taking care of them, as if they were my own blood, and I will never let anyone hurt them again. The winter wind whistled through the bare trees, cold and sharp. But Gavin stood there for a long time, steady and unmoving, listening to the beating of his heart, for once not for ambition, not for legacy, but for something far greater, love. The day everything changed. That morning, Carter Hall was wrapped in an eerie stillness. Outside, delicate snowflakes floated through the air, as if the entire world was holding its breath. Gavin sat at the dining table, carefully pouring milk into 2 colorful bowls of cereal, while Liam quietly colored a superhero picture with his crayons. Noah, usually the more energetic of the two, sat with his chin resting on his hand, his dark circled eyes betraying the toll of the lingering fevers. "I'm not hungry," Noah whispered, pushing his bowl away. Gavin gently squeezed the boy's small hand. "That's okay, kiddo. Eat when you feel up to it. We're getting through this, remember?" Noah nodded, managing a faint, brave smile. Inside, Gavin battled a rare sense of helplessness. He had faced billion-dollar negotiations and ruthless competitors, but he had never felt so utterly powerless. Until now, watching a small boy fight for his very life. At Memorial Hospital, in a small, sterile conference room lit by harsh fluorescent lights, Gavin sat across from a team of doctors. On the screen, Noah's health charts flickered ominously with rows of alarming numbers. "We've run additional tests, Dr. Leonard said, his voice low and measured. "Mr. Carter, your bone marrow is a near-perfect match for Noah, the kind of match we usually only see between biological parents or identical twins." Gavin nodded, no longer questioning the truth. His heart had long since accepted Liam and Noah as his own. "There are risks to the donation procedure, Dr. Leonard continued gravely. "While generally safe, there's still a chance of infection, temporary immune suppression, and in rare cases, serious complications." Gavin met his gaze, his voice steady and resolute. "When do we start, Dr. Leonard paused for a moment, then nodded. "First thing tomorrow morning." That night, Gavin sat by the boy's bedside, reading aloud stories of brave knights and grand sea voyages. His deep voice filled the cozy room, carrying hope into every corner. When a story ended, Noah, frail but awake, tugged at Gavin's sleeve. "Uncle Gavin," he whispered, his voice barely audible. "Am I being a burden?" Gavin's heart twisted painfully. He leaned down, gripping the boy's tiny hand tightly. "No, Noah," he said softly. "You're the reason I wake up every morning with hope in my heart." Noah blinked slowly, a weak but radiant smile crossing his face. "You'll still be here, even if I have to stay in the hospital a long time?" Noah asked. "I'll be here," Gavin promised, each word branded into his soul. The next morning, before dawn had even broken, Gavin lay on a gurney dressed in a pale blue surgical gown, feeling the cold bite of the sterile air. Marcus stood at the doorway, his face etched with concern. "Are you sure about this?" Marcus asked quietly. Gavin gave a faint smile, his eyes alight with rare, profound peace. "I've never been more certain of anything in my life." The surgical doors swung open. Gavin took a deep breath, closed his eyes, and surrendered a part of himself for the tiny life waiting for him beyond those stark white walls. While Gavin was in surgery, Liam sat curled up on a bench in the hospital hallway, hugging his battered stuffed dinosaur close. Marcus sat beside him, a steady hand on his shoulder. "Uncle Gavin's going to be okay, right?" Liam asked, his voice trembling. "He's one of the strongest people I know," Marcus said, offering a warm smile. "He's doing this because he loves you and Noah more than anything." Liam nodded solemnly, a boy forced to grow up faster than he should. "I'll do my math homework better," Liam whispered, "and I won't fight with Noah anymore. I promise." Marcus smiled sadly, squeezing the boy's small shoulder. In moments like these, even the smallest promises carried the weight of the world. Hours later, Gavin woke up in the recovery room. His body ached and his head spun, but when Dr. Leonard entered, his face beaming, Gavin felt like he'd just conquered Everest. "The marrow harvest went beautifully," the doctor announced. "We're already starting the transfusion. Noah's fighting hard. If all goes well, he has an excellent chance of full recovery." Gavin couldn't help but smile, even though his lips were dry and cracked. "Just let him live," Gavin whispered hoarsely. "You've given him the greatest gift he could ever receive, Dr. Leonard said, resting a hand on Gavin's shoulder. Later that afternoon, still weak but determined, Gavin was allowed a brief visit to Noah's room. Noah lay there, tiny and swaddled in warm blankets, his arm wrapped in bandages. When he saw Gavin, his entire face lit up. "Uncle Gavin," Noah croaked, reaching out. Ignoring the throbbing pain in his own body, Gavin crossed the room and clasped Noah's hand in his. "You're a real warrior, kiddo," Gavin whispered. "So are you," Noah replied with a faint, crooked smile. They stayed like that for a long time, hand in hand, speaking no words, because in that silence, every vow, every heartbeat of love had already been said. A second father. The first morning after the bone marrow transplant, soft March sunlight filtered through the hospital window, casting a warm golden blanket over Noah's hospital bed. Gavin sat there, still wearing the wrinkled dress shirt from the night before, holding a cup of cold coffee he hadn't touched, his eyes never leaving the small, sleeping face before him. "Mr. Carter, Dr." Leonard said quietly as he entered the room, his voice low and grave. "I believe it's time you heard the full truth." Gavin nodded, his heart tightening, already bracing for what was to come. In a small conference room, Gavin sat across from Marcus, who had just returned from weeks of silent investigation. Marcus placed a thick folder on the table, papers that, at a glance, made Gavin's spine stiffen. Before his death during that fateful climbing expedition, Marcus began, Nathan left a DNA sample at a fertility bank in Montana. Gavin closed his eyes, his fingers curling tightly into fists. Elise Turner, Liam and Noah's mother, once worked on a conservation project Nathan had funded. According to hospital records, she used Nathan's stored DNA for artificial insemination after his death. Marcus slid an old photo across the table. Nathan and Elise, hand in hand under the soft light of a remote conservation camp. There was no tragic breakup, Marcus continued. Elise loved Nathan, and in her own way, she found a way to keep a piece of him alive. Gavin swallowed hard. "So," Marcus nodded gravely, "Liam and Noah are Nathan's biological sons, Gavin. And because you and Nathan were identical twins, genetically, they're also your sons." In that moment, a tidal wave of questions, pain, and hope crashed through Gavin. Memories of Nathan, his lopsided grin, their endless debates about life and dreams, flooded back, merging with the undeniable truth. A part of Nathan lived on through Liam and Noah. That afternoon, Gavin returned to the patient room, carrying a tray laden with Noah's favorites, star-shaped pancakes, a strawberry milkshake, and a clumsily carved apple shaped like a rabbit, all made with his own imperfect hands. Noah's eyes widened as he spotted the tray. "For me," the boy croaked, his voice still raspy. Gavin chuckled, pulling up a chair beside him. "Who else, champ?" As Noah nibbled cautiously at a tiny piece of pancake, warmth bloomed inside Gavin. This wasn't duty. This wasn't pity. This was love, real, fierce, and unconditional. The next day, Gavin called for a meeting with Veronica in the hospital's conference room. Veronica entered, impeccably dressed, her eyes wary. "The real DNA results are in," Gavin said, tossing a copy of the updated report onto the table. "Liam and Noah are Nathan's sons, which makes them the rightful heirs to Carter Holdings." Veronica sneered. "So what? Are you going to hand over the company to a pair of 4-year-olds? Gavin's voice remained calm, unwavering. "I'm restructuring, establishing a trust for the boys. Marcus and the legal team will oversee it. I'll manage the company until they come of age." Veronica clutched her designer handbag, her voice rising. "You're destroying everything we built over..." "What? Sentimentality?" Gavin stood, his voice dropping into something colder than steel. "It's not sentimentality, Veronica. It's family." That night, back at Carter Hall, Gavin sat in the grand armchair by the roaring fireplace, with Liam and Noah curled up on either side of him, each clutching a book. The flickering firelight danced across the walls, illuminating the innocent, trusting faces of the boys. "Uncle Gavin," Liam whispered, "can you tell us about Uncle Nathan?" Gavin leaned back, his heart swelling with bittersweet tenderness. "He loved climbing mountains," Gavin began, his voice thick with emotion. "He used to say, 'Every mountain teaches you something, but family is the highest summit of all.'" The boys nodded, their eyes shining like small lanterns against the dark. "Can we climb a mountain together someday?" Noah asked, his voice trembling with both fatigue and hope. Gavin smiled, pulling them closer. "We'll climb every mountain you want, kiddo, as long as we're together." The next morning, in the office of the family lawyer, Gavin signed the documents that legally recognized him as Liam and Noah's guardian, and their rightful father in every way that mattered. Standing beside him, Liam clutched Noah's hand tightly, looking up at Gavin with absolute trust. "Will we have your last name too?" Liam asked shyly. Gavin knelt down, bringing himself to eye level with him. "If you want it," he said, his voice steady and full of warmth. "We'll all share the same name. One real family." Noah, tired but beaming, whispered, "The Carter family." That afternoon, the gates of Carter Hall swung open, welcoming three souls home after a long journey. Mrs. Harrington, the longtime housekeeper, stood on the front porch, tears glistening in her eyes. "Dinner's ready," she called, her voice trembling. Gavin carried Noah in one arm and held Liam's hand with the other as they crossed the threshold. Not into a cold, empty mansion, but into a true home. That night, Gavin watched over the boys as they slept in their newly painted room. Soft blue walls adorned with paintings of mountains and starry skies. He stood there quietly for a long time, a wave of gratitude washing over him so deep it defied words. Family, not a gift, not a duty, a miracle, one he had almost lost had he not had the courage to follow his heart. The second morning, on that April morning, soft sunlight bathed the stone walkways of Carter Hall, illuminating a sight Gavin Carter once could never have imagined. Liam and Noah, dressed in crisp new Westridge Academy uniforms, hand in hand, skipping under rows of blossoming cherry trees. Standing on the front steps, Gavin held a cup of coffee in one hand and quickly snapped a photo with his phone. For the first time, he wasn't living just to close billion-dollar deals, but to capture the simple, priceless moments of life. 3 weeks earlier, in the family court of Manhattan, Gavin Carter had stood before the judge, tightly holding the small hands of two little boys in what was the briefest, yet most sacred, hearing of his life. "Mr. Gavin Carter," the elderly judge said warmly, "do you confirm your wish to adopt Liam and Noah Turner Carter, committing to love, nurture, and protect them as your own children?" Gavin squeezed the boy's hands gently, his gaze filled with a universe of emotion. "Not just a commitment, Your Honor," he replied, voice thick with emotion. "It's a choice, made with my whole heart." Liam looked up at him, eyes wide and shining. Noah clung even tighter to his hand, afraid to let go of the anchor he had finally found. The gavel came down with a sharp crack, a single sound that would echo in Gavin's heart forever. From that moment forward, they were a family, not by paperwork, but by soul. At Westridge Academy, a grand, historic school tucked away in the heart of the city, Liam and Noah faced their first day with a mixture of wonder and nerves. Gavin sat on a bench near the playground, pretending to read the newspaper while his eyes stayed glued to the boys. "Mr. Carter," a woman's voice called gently. A young teacher, with soft curls and a kind smile, approached him. "I'm Ms. Jenkins, their homeroom teacher." "Pleasure to meet you," Gavin said, rising to shake her hand, feeling, for once, more nervous than he ever had walking into a global boardroom. "They'll be just fine, Ms." Jenkins reassured him with a smile. "Liam's curious, and Noah's a little shy. Perfectly normal." Gavin nodded, feeling a small, stubborn seed of hope take root in his heart. But not everyone welcomed this new family with open arms. Over the following weeks, the tabloid headlines exploded. "Billionaire bachelor adopts kids to save his image." The mystery behind the Carter boys. Each twisted story was a thorn in Gavin's side. One evening, after reading the boys' 3 bedtime stories, Gavin made his way down to the study, where Marcus was waiting, his face grave. "We found out who's behind the articles," Marcus said, placing a thick dossier on the desk. "Some disgruntled former partners, and a few old acquaintances of Veronica." Gavin's jaw tightened. Despite everything, Veronica hadn't given up on trying to tarnish his new life. I don't care anymore, Gavin said softly. I don't need the world approval. All I need is for those two boys to know they are loved. That's enough. To drown out the noise of the outside world, Gavin planned a quiet dinner at Carter Hall. No grand galas, no champagne toasts, just a warm, candlelit meal under the soft glow of crystal chandeliers. At dinner, Liam and Noah eagerly shared tales of their first day at school. How Ms. Jenkins taught math through puzzles. How a little girl had lent Noah her crayons. Gavin sat there, soaking in every laugh, every sparkle in their eyes. The meal ended with a homemade apple pie for Mrs. Harrington, sweet and perfect, just like the moment itself. As media pressure mounted, Gavin decided to step into the spotlight. At the grand opening of Carter Holdings' new charity initiative, the City Family and Children's Fund, Gavin made an unexpected announcement. I, Gavin Carter, did not adopt Liam and Noah for publicity or advantage. I adopted them because I believe family isn't built by blood. It's built by choice, by commitment, and by love. The auditorium fell silent for a beat, before erupting into thunderous applause. Standing under the bright lights, Gavin spotted Liam and Noah in the front row, their faces glowing with pride. And in that moment, Gavin knew, no matter what the world outside said, he had already won, through love. That night, after the event, Gavin sat by the living room window. Liam rested his head on Gavin's left shoulder, Noah curled up against his right. Together, they watched the first stars twinkle in the night sky. Uncle Gavin, Liam whispered, yeah, when we grow up, can we have a family like this too? Gavin tightened his arms around them both. Family isn't something you find out there, he murmured. Family starts here, he said, gently tapping Liam's chest. Where there's love and loyalty, there's home. Noah yawned, mumbling sleepily. I'm staying right here. Forever. Gavin chuckled softly, pulling the blanket over them. Forever, kiddo. The autumn reckoning. On a crisp autumn morning, delicate sunlight filtered through the maple trees lining the entrance of Carter Hall. Gavin stood at the study window, a cooling cup of coffee in his hand, his heart heavy. Today would be the day of reckoning, not just for Veronica, but for himself. In the boardroom atop Carter Enterprises, the air was thick like a storm waiting to break. One by one, the board members arrived, each carrying a mix of anxiety and suspicion in their eyes. At the head of the long table, Gavin sat upright, calm in appearance but with a gaze sharp as a blade. Veronica entered last, later than usual, her perfectly tailored black dress failing to hide the exhaustion etched into her features. In her hand was a thick folder, likely her final attempt to cling to power. We're gathered here today, Gavin began, his voice low and steady, to address an issue that can no longer be ignored. He nodded to Marcus, who stepped forward to present. On the large screen, the evidence appeared in stark clarity. Tampered DNA results, shady financial transactions, and records of secret meetings where Veronica had schemed to undermine Gavin's adoption of Liam and Noah. Murmurs swept through the boardroom. Veronica paled. She forced a cold smile, but her hands trembled as she closed her folder. What you've shown, she said, her voice dry, doesn't erase the fact that I kept this company stable while you played house. Gavin rose to his feet, never breaking his gaze. You kept it stable through betrayal, he said. Through risking a child's life, all for power. He turned to the board. Today, I am requesting a vote to remove Veronica Carter from all executive positions at Carter Enterprises. It didn't take long. One hand raised, then another, then almost the entire room, unanimous in silent judgment. Veronica's folder slipped from her fingers, the thud against the table cold and final, the sound of an empire crumbling. That afternoon, when Gavin returned to Carter Hall, Liam and Noah were already waiting by the fireplace. The boys excitedly showed off their drawings from a class project about family, each picture a colorful, messy depiction of a tall man holding hands with two small children, standing under a golden sun. I drew you, Uncle Gavin. Liam beamed. Me too. Noah chimed in, his eyes sparkling. Gavin laughed softly, kneeling to pull them both into a hug, feeling his heart slowly, piece by piece, mending itself. Outside, the wind whistled through the trees and rattled the last golden leaves, but inside, the room glowed with firelight and the sound of innocent laughter. A week later, Veronica showed up at Carter Hall, unannounced. Gavin met her outside, under a sky brushed with grays and golds, where the maple leaves fluttered down like little boats. Veronica approached, her once proud bearing diminished, her eyes weary. "You won," she said simply, her voice stripped of defiance. "It wasn't about winning," Gavin replied evenly. "It was about protecting what matters." They stood in silence for a long moment. "You know," Veronica whispered, "I once believed that power was the only thing that could protect us." Gavin looked straight into her eyes. "And you lost what truly mattered." The wind swept a handful of golden leaves between them. Veronica pulled a folded letter from her coat pocket and placed it in Gavin's hand. "For the boys," she said, "in case they ever ask about me." Without another word, she turned and walked away, smaller somehow, swallowed up by the vast, cold October sky. That afternoon, Gavin brewed tea for Liam and Noah, a new tradition the boys had come to love. They sat by the big bay window, watching the wind race through the garden. "Uncle Gavin," Noah asked shyly, his voice uncertain. "Yes. Can bad people become good again?" Gavin paused, gazing at the two small, earnest faces in front of him, his heart swelling with 1,000 unspoken emotions. "I think," he said carefully, "everyone has the chance to fix their mistakes. But they have to choose it themselves." Liam nodded solemnly, whether he truly understood or not. His eyes shone with simple trust. Outside, the sun dipped lower behind the trees, painting the world in soft, forgiving gold. In the months that followed, Veronica faded from the headlines. No more power plays. No more whispered scandals. Rumor had it she moved to a quiet town in Vermont, opened a small bookstore, and spent her days volunteering. Gavin never asked for more details. Sometimes, on late nights while reading to Liam and Noah, he would think of Veronica, not with anger, but with a quiet, wistful sadness for what might have been. But then, the boys' laughter, bright, irrepressible, would call him back to the present. A present overflowing with light and love. One chilly evening, Gavin sat in the study, a sheet of paper and a pen before him. He wrote a letter, not to anyone in particular, but for Liam and Noah to find someday. "To my beloved sons, there are people who enter our lives to teach us something, sometimes through love, sometimes through pain. But the most important thing is this: never let the mistakes of others define your heart. Family, in the end, is not built from blood, but from choice, from love, from a promise never to leave each other behind. And Uncle Gavin chose you, not out of duty, but with all his heart. A new beginning." The soft spring sunlight bathed the sprawling lawns of Carter Hall in a gentle golden hue. That morning, Gavin, dressed in a simple suit, stood before a wooden table set in the garden, neatly stacked papers laid out in front of him. Liam and Noah, clad in crisp white shirts and navy khakis, sat on either side, wide-eyed with excitement, though not fully understanding the magnitude of the event about to unfold. "Uncle Gavin," Liam whispered, a hint of childlike worry in his voice, "what are we signing today?" Gavin leaned down, offering a tender smile. "We're starting a new journey, Liam," he said. "A journey to help children just like you. Children who need a miracle." He rested his hand on the embossed cover of the file, its title gleaming under the sun. "Nathan Carter Foundation for Pediatric Hope. We're creating this foundation to honor Uncle Nathan," Gavin continued, his eyes glistening faintly, "and to give other children, children fighting the way Noah once did, a better chance." Noah looked up, gripping Gavin's hand tightly. "Just like you gave me a chance?" Gavin nodded gently. "And now we'll pass that chance on to many others." In that fleeting moment, beneath the clear, hopeful sky, a sacred promise was made, not with words, but with hearts. Before the formal signing, the three of them shared breakfast on the front porch. The meal was simple yet warm. Piles of toast, scrambled eggs, and plump red strawberries, Noah's favorite. "I think the foundation should give out pancakes to every hospital," Liam declared, making Gavin and Noah burst into laughter. "That's a fine idea," Gavin said, tapping the boy's nose. "But maybe we'll start with medicine and research first." Their laughter rang out across the garden, chasing away any nerves about the important day ahead. At the National Children's Hospital, where Noah had once fought for his life, the launch event was held in a courtyard filled with colorful balloons and rows of pristine white chairs. Doctors, nurses, families, and a throng of reporters gathered. Gavin stepped up to the podium, Liam and Noah standing proudly on either side, each clutching a teddy bear stitched with the Nathan Carter Foundation logo. 3 years ago, Gavin began, his voice warm and steady, I found 2 lost little boys in the rain. They needed a miracle, and it turned out they became the miracle that changed my life. He paused, his gaze softening as it fell on Noah, then Liam. Today, with all the love and gratitude in our hearts, we launched the Nathan Carter Foundation for Pediatric Hope, a foundation not just for medical research, but to deliver hope, to tell every child fighting out there, you are not alone. The audience fell into reverent silence before erupting into thunderous applause. After the ceremony, amid congratulations and flashing cameras, Liam and Noah rushed to wrap their arms around Gavin. "We did it, Uncle Gavin." Noah squealed. "Uncle Nathan will be proud," Liam whispered, his eyes glistening. Gavin squeezed them tightly, uncaring of the crowd watching. In that moment, in each other's arms, they were a true family. No titles needed, no certificates required. Only love. That night, Carter Hall overflowed with laughter. A small celebration was held under twinkling string lights draped across the garden like a sky full of stars. Gavin sat on a bench, Liam leaning against one side, Noah curled up against the other. "Uncle Gavin," Liam spoke up, "when we grow up, we'll make the foundation even bigger, right?" Gavin nodded. "That's our dream, and I believe you both will make it happen." Noah squeezed Gavin's hand. "I want to help kids without homes, like I once didn't have one." Gavin gently brushed a hand through Noah's soft hair. "You will, and I'll always be right beside you." The sky darkened, a cool breeze drifting through, but the fire within their hearts burned bright. Later, under the night sky, Gavin spread a blanket over the grass. The 3 of them lay side by side, staring up at the stars. "Look," Noah pointed, "that constellation looks like a rainbow." "No," Liam giggled. "It looks like a dinosaur." Gavin laughed, feeling lighter than he had in months. "Then it's the rainbow dinosaur constellation," he declared, sending the boys into peals of laughter. That simple moment, one blanket, one sky, 3 hearts tethered by love, was more precious than anything Gavin had ever owned. Later that night, after Liam and Noah had drifted off to sleep, Gavin sat alone by the study window, the moonlight casting a pale glow across a blank page. He wrote, "Dear Nathan, today, your dream continues in a way you might never have imagined. Your boys, the last pieces of you, have taught me about courage, resilience, and a love without conditions, something I once thought I had lost. I can never replace you, but I can ensure your legacy lives on, by loving, by hoping, by giving new chances to other little lives. Rest easy, Nathan. Our family carries on." Gavin folded the letter carefully, tucking it into the front page of his journal. Because the most important things in life cannot be bought, only loved. Summer at Carter Hall. Summer had arrived across the rolling hills surrounding Carter Hall, spreading a lush green carpet beneath an endless, open sky. Gavin stood on the porch, a steaming cup of coffee in hand, watching as Liam and Noah raced their bikes along the gravel path winding through the rose garden. That sight, simple, chaotic, filled with laughter, was something he, once a cold and calculated CEO, had never imagined for his life. "Fire! Fire!" Liam shouted from the kitchen. Gavin rushed inside, just in time to see a burnt pancake smoldering on the stove. Noah stood beside it, holding a spatula, his eyes wide as saucers. "Only turn away for 5 seconds." Gavin chuckled, turned off the burner, and pulled out a box of cereal from the pantry. "Golden rule in the kitchen," he said, placing a hand on Noah's shoulder. Never take your eyes off the pan, or at least always have a plan B. The three of them sat around the table, eating cereal instead of homemade pancakes, laughing about their first culinary disaster of the summer. The next week, Gavin stood under a light morning drizzle, holding two small red umbrellas, waiting for Liam and Noah to come out from their end-of-year school ceremony. Noah clutched his most resilient student certificate, while Liam proudly hugged his best classmate award. "Uncle Gavin!" Noah shouted, running up and waving his certificate. "I did it." Gavin knelt down in the muddy schoolyard, gathering both boys into his arms, uncaring of the rain or the curious glances from other parents. He whispered, "I'm prouder of you two than any contract I've ever signed." That moment, simple, pure, etched itself deeper into Gavin's heart than any grand accolade ever could. That night, after showers and fresh pajamas, the three built a blanket fort in the living room. Under the soft glow of a flashlight, Gavin read The Velveteen Rabbit, his deep voice filling the cozy tent. "Real isn't how you are made," said the skin horse. "It's a thing that happens to you." Noah nuzzled against Gavin's side, while Liam rested his feet on Gavin's knee, both boys listening as if each word carried magic. When the story ended, Gavin kissed each forehead softly, his heart swelling with silent gratitude for these simple, perfect nights. One afternoon, while sorting through old books in the library, Gavin stumbled upon an envelope tucked inside Nathan's mountaineering journal. Hands trembling, Gavin opened it. Inside was an unsent letter Nathan had written. "If you're reading this, it means you found them. Take care of the pieces I left behind, Gavin. Because family isn't something we choose. It's something we're gifted." Gavin pressed the letter to his chest and closed his eyes. Nathan's words fit the final piece into place. That very weekend, Gavin took Liam and Noah camping at Timberline Lake, the place he and Nathan had spent so many childhood summers. They pitched a tent under towering trees, roasted marshmallows over a crackling fire, and told ghost stories so silly that they ended up giggling uncontrollably. As night fell, Gavin sat between the two boys, staring up at the starry sky. "I think," Liam said softly, "each star is a wish." "Then let's send one out," Gavin whispered. The three of them closed their eyes. No need to speak their wishes aloud, because in their hearts, they were already the same. To stay together always. Back at Carter Hall, Gavin sat at his study desk, a new plan for Carter Enterprises spread out before him. He had decided he would step down as CEO after more than 25 years at the helm. It was time to give Liam, Noah, and all their chaotic mornings and flashlight story times the place they deserved, first in his life. Even Veronica, now a changed person, supported his decision. "You found the most important thing," she said, hugging Gavin for the first time in years. "Don't ever let it go." A few days later, Gavin returned home to find a watercolor painting on the dining table. Liam and Noah had painted it. 3 figures, 2 small, 1 tall, standing in front of Carter Hall, hand in hand, under the crooked, childlike scrawl. "The Carter family, forever." Gavin sat down, brushing his fingers lightly over the painting as if it were more valuable than any award that had ever hung on his office walls. Autumn arrived, setting the leaves ablaze in shades of red and gold. One crisp morning, Gavin stood on the porch while Liam and Noah, backpacks strapped tight, prepared to leave for school. "Uncle Gavin," Noah called out, turning around, "when we graduate college, will you still be waiting for us?" Gavin laughed, kneeling to meet their eyes. "Not just waiting," he said, voice thick with emotion. "I'll be there, cheering, hollering, and maybe crying a little too." The boys threw their arms around him. No more words were needed. A family, a future, built not from perfection, but from a choice. The choice to love, the choice to stay. A new journey. That October morning, the sky stretched out like a sheet of pale blue silk, and a gentle breeze stirred the stone steps leading into the Grand City Hall. Gavin stood backstage, lightly gripping the folded speech in his hand, his eyes never leaving the 2 smiling boys in their tiny formal suits. Liam and Noah, once 2 lost pieces of the world, now stood proudly beside him, steady and radiant. Earlier that morning, in the cozy kitchen at Carter Hall, The scene had been no different from any other day. Noah hopped around the breakfast table, struggling with a bright red tie at his neck, while Liam carefully packed sandwiches into a lunchbox. "I don't want my neck strangled," Noah grumbled, tugging at the loose knot. Gavin chuckled softly, stepping in to help. "Just a little tighter, buddy, so everyone can see how much you've grown." After a few adjustments, the red tie stood out like a bold exclamation mark against his tiny black suit. As they entered the hall, Gavin immediately sensed the difference in the air, formal, tense, filled with emotion. On the giant screen behind the stage, a smiling image of Nathan Carter lit up, not as a celebrated businessman, but as a brother, a father figure whose journey had ended too soon. The seats were packed, business leaders, scientists, families helped by the Nathan Carter Foundation. Gavin swallowed hard, feeling the weight of the moment settle heavy on his shoulders. But along with it came a deep, burning pride. The ceremony opened with a short video clip, Nathan's voice playing from an old interview during his college days. "If I can leave anything behind," Nathan said, "I want it to be hope. A hand reaching out to those who need it most." Liam grabbed Gavin's hand as Nathan's voice filled the hall. "Uncle Gavin, do you think Uncle Nathan can see us?" Gavin squeezed the small hand tightly. "I'm sure he can, and I believe he's proud beyond words." When Gavin's name was called, he stepped onto the stage, the spotlights forcing him to squint slightly. In that moment, he carried not just words, but memories, heartache, love, and every silent promise he had made over the years. Gavin paused briefly before the microphone, steadying his breath. Then, in a deep, warm voice, he began. "Today, we don't just honor a man. We honor the ideals Nathan Carter believed in, that life only gains meaning when we use it to lift others up." He glanced at Liam and Noah sitting in the front row, their eyes shining. "Family," Gavin continued, "is not just bound by blood. Family is what we choose to love, to nurture, and to protect, even when life is hard." Soft applause rippled through the hall, growing into a warm, embracing wave. When Gavin stepped down from the podium, Liam ran to him, throwing his arms around him. "I knew you would say that," Liam whispered, resting his head on Gavin's chest. "You always know how to turn everything into magic." Gavin laughed quietly, pulling both boys into a tight embrace. "Not me," he corrected. "It's because you two brought magic into my life." The ceremony ended with Gavin, Liam, and Noah cutting the ribbon for the new research wing, Nathan's Hope. Amidst the applause and flashing cameras, Gavin realized it wasn't the billion-dollar projects nor the accolades that truly mattered. It was the simple things, the hug of a child, the grateful smile of a mother, that were the legacy he wanted to leave behind. A few days after the ceremony, Gavin drove Liam and Noah back to the small town where he and Nathan had grown up. They stopped by the old stream where the two brothers had once built clumsy wooden rafts, laughing until their sides hurt when the rafts inevitably sank. Gavin pointed toward the smooth rocks beneath the water. "Right there," he said, "your Uncle Nathan once saved me from breaking my leg. I want to build a raft." Noah shouted. The three of them spent the whole afternoon gathering sticks, tying them together with string, crafting a new raft. And sure enough, it sank faster than the old one. But the laughter that echoed across the banks was louder and freer than Gavin could ever remember. That night, they camped by the stream, a fire crackling beneath the endless stars. Gavin sat between the boys, cradling their small heads against his shoulders, all three gazing up at the wide, glittering sky. "Uncle Gavin," Liam mumbled sleepily, "we'll stay like this forever, right?" Gavin pressed a gentle kiss to their messy hair. "Not just stay," he whispered. "We'll grow even better. Because family isn't just something we have. It's something we build, every day, with everything good we carry in our hearts." The firelight flickered over Liam and Noah's peaceful faces as they drifted to sleep. And for the first time in many years, Gavin closed his eyes too, his heart filled with a deep, unwavering peace. His long, lonely journey had ended. A new journey, one built on love and a legacy that would endure beyond time, had truly begun. The spring within the heart, The early spring breeze weaved its way through the ancient trees of Carter Hall, carrying the scent of fresh grass and the cheerful songs of birds. The estate, once cloaked in cold silence, was now alive with new sounds. The laughter of children, a dog barking at the dancing sunlight, and the soft chime of wind bells swaying on the porch. Gavin Carter stood leaning against the old wooden railing, a steaming cup of tea in hand, his eyes following the two children playing out in the yard. Liam was busy assembling a model airplane on the lawn, while Noah, hair tousled by the wind, struggled to get his newly built kite to soar. The sunlight bathed everything in gold, turning the scene before Gavin into a living painting, a painting he once believed he would never get to create. That morning it started with the usual cheerful chaos in the kitchen. "I burned the pancakes," Liam cried, shaking the frying pan like an exasperated little chef. Gavin turned from the coffee counter, raising an eyebrow. "Who's up for some crispy, blackened pancakes?" he teased, making Noah burst into giggles, dropping his honey spoon onto the floor. They cleaned up the crumbs, wiped the sticky mess, then huddled around the kitchen table, sharing the oddly shaped but delicious-smelling pancakes. Perfection wasn't needed, Gavin thought, only togetherness. Amid the peaceful morning, Gavin's phone rang. It was Marcus Shaw, his loyal friend and now director of the Nathan Carter Foundation. "A major storm's heading our way, Gavin. Mandatory evacuation orders have been issued." Frowning, Gavin glanced out the window. Dark clouds were already piling up on the horizon. Without hesitation, he packed the essentials into small backpacks. "Liam, Noah, rally up," he called out. The boys rushed in, taking the backpacks and raincoats Gavin handed them. There were no tears, no panic, just absolute trust in the man they now called Dad. Driving the old SUV straight toward the designated community shelter, Gavin kept the music low. Amid the rhythmic drumming of rain against the windshield, Noah began singing a silly children's song, dragging Liam into a chaotic chorus. Gavin caught their reflections in the rearview mirror, two little faces, glowing with laughter even as the world outside raged. Inside the shelter, families huddled together, surrounded by the heavy smells of dampness, worry, and exhaustion. Gavin spread an old blanket across the floor, letting Liam and Noah sit, and pulled out a worn Kindle to read them an adventure story. Soon, a few curious children gathered around, and then some adults, drawn in by the steady, warm cadence of his voice. In the midst of cold chairs and distant thunder, Gavin's storytelling became a small, flickering fire of comfort. When the storm finally began to subside, rescue workers handed out bread and milk. Gavin quietly split his small ration with a little girl crying from hunger, and Liam and Noah, without a word, did the same. An elderly woman nearby, her face lined with hardship, gave Gavin a tender smile. "Not every man who has wealth remembers how to share," she whispered. Gavin simply nodded, feeling a profound gratitude for the greatest lesson life had ever taught him. True wealth is not measured by possessions, but by the hands you reach for in the storm. When the skies finally cleared, they returned to Carter Hall. The grand house welcomed them with a warm scent of wood, the familiar creaks of the old floors, and the colorful, childlike paintings Liam and Noah had taped proudly to the walls. Gavin dropped the backpack by the door and collapsed into his favorite old armchair, the boys snuggling up on either side. "Uncle Gavin," Noah asked shyly, "if our house blew away, would we build another one?" Gavin ruffled the boy's hair. "Home isn't walls and a roof, kiddo. Home is where someone waits for you to come back. As long as the three of us are together, we'll always have a home." Liam tightened his grip on Gavin's hand, nodding fiercely. That evening, under the soft golden lights, Gavin opened a new journal, a birthday gift from Liam, and began to write. "Today, I was reminded once again, family isn't built from bricks and mortar. Family is built on trust, sacrifice, and promises kept even when storms rage." In the next room, the soft breathing of Liam and Noah rose and fell like a gentle lullaby. Spring in the heart. Stepping out onto the porch, Gavin gazed at the stars, twinkling for the first time in days. There was no longer any emptiness in his heart, no regrets, only an endless spring, growing from pieces once thought lost forever. He had found his family, not through wealth, not through power, but by opening his heart, by reaching out to two children who needed a home, and letting them reach back, stronger than anything he had ever known. Gavin Carter, once standing atop the lonely summit of the world, now understood. The greatest victory isn't conquering the outside world. It's building a small, sturdy one where hearts are loved, sheltered, and belong. Under the starlit sky, Gavin closed his eyes, whispering like a prayer. "Thank you, Nathan. Thank you for leaving me not just a legacy, but a family." And somewhere across the vast heavens, Gavin could almost hear a soft chuckle, the distant echo of a brother who had never truly left. Lessons from Gavin Carter, a family we choose. In today's world, where success is often measured by bank balances, stock portfolios, or social status, the story of Gavin Carter, Liam, and Noah reminds us of a simple but increasingly rare truth. True family is not something we are born into. It's something we choose, nurture, and sacrifice for. Gavin was once the very embodiment of the American dream, a self-made CEO, owner of Carter Enterprises, living in a grand but hollow estate, with a life scheduled down to the minute. But it was this very man who, one rainy afternoon in front of a crumbling community center, made a decision that would change everything. To bring two lost children, Liam and Noah, home into his life. In many ways, we are all like Gavin at some point, throwing ourselves into work, accumulating wealth, chasing external achievements to fill the emptiness inside. But true happiness, as Gavin learned, doesn't come from a title or $1 million deal. It comes from his simplest moments: a messy breakfast with burnt pancakes, a bedtime story told under the glow of a warm lamp, a tight hug in the midst of a storm. Gavin's story also reminds us that family isn't confined to blood ties. In today's world, how many elderly people live alone in big houses after their grown children move on with their own lives? How many children grow up in materially rich but emotionally barren homes? Family, as Gavin redefined it, is not determined by DNA, but by the choice to stay, to listen patiently, and to sacrifice selflessly. The story also highlights the importance of personal responsibility. When Noah fell gravely ill, Gavin didn't use his busy schedule as an excuse or look for someone else to bear the burden. He willingly risked his own health to donate bone marrow and save the boy's life. In a society where it's easy to shirk responsibility with excuses like, "I'm too busy," "It's not my problem," or "Someone else will take care of it," Gavin showed that sometimes the right choice is to step up, no matter how heavy or risky it might be. Beyond that, Gavin's journey is a lesson in forgiveness and letting go of the past. Veronica, his sister, betrayed the family's trust out of fear and ambition. While Gavin exposed her wrongdoing, he also left the door open for redemption. In today's increasingly polarized world, where it's all black or white, love or hate, Gavin's story teaches us. Forgiveness doesn't mean forgetting. It's the brave act of moving forward without carrying the weight of bitterness. Ultimately, Gavin's story doesn't end with a glorious corporate victory or a billion-dollar deal. It ends with a peaceful evening, Gavin watching his two sons playing under the sunset. In a world rocked by pandemics, wars, and economic crises that can wipe out the most carefully crafted financial plans, this lesson is more precious than ever. The greatest treasure in life isn't what we accumulate. It's who we love and who loves us back. Applying Gavin Carter's lessons to our own lives doesn't require grand gestures. It starts with small but meaningful actions. Spending just 10 more minutes truly listening to family each day. Choosing patience over anger when loved ones make mistakes. Opening our hearts to those outside our bloodline. From lonely seniors in nursing homes to foster children needing a temporary home. Letting go of grudges to heal our own hearts. And always remembering, at the end of life, people don't regret not making more money. They regret not loving more. Like Gavin, each of us can redefine success. Not by our Forbes ranking, but by the smiles we create, the wounds we help heal, and the hearts we connect. And maybe, one evening, standing under a golden sunset, you too will smile the way Gavin Carter once did, realizing you've found the greatest treasure of all, a real family, a place to belong, an everlasting spring within your heart. Before we go, I'd love to hear from you. Where are you watching from? Are you tuning in from the heartland of America, a quiet countryside, or maybe a bustling city dreaming of open fields? Drop a comment. Below, I read every single one. And if this story touched your heart, inspired you, or simply gave you a moment of warmth in your day, don't forget to hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you never miss another uplifting story like this. Thank you so much for being here. Your support means everything, and I can't wait to bring you more heartfelt stories soon. Until next time, stay kind, stay inspired, and I'll see you in the next one.